I think it's fair to say that Star Wars is a very different animal to Star Trek. And they both began very differently. And you can't turn one into the other. Star Trek began as an episodic TV series. And each week, the crew of the USS Enterprise journeyed to a new planet, encountered some type of situation, alien being, or unusual phenomena, and some kind of threat, and they had to overcome it. With a few exceptions here and there, the Star Trek franchise has mostly followed the format of a story told and resolved in one 45-minute installment. This typically allows the series to explore lots of different types of genres and different types of storytelling tropes across a 22 to 26 episode season of television. Now, Star Trek can do a high-stakes, universe-ending story one week, and then a light-hearted comedic episode the next. After that, a political or philosophical allegory, a western the following week, or a hardcore cerebral science fiction story the week after that. Now, when it comes to the Star Trek movies, they are a little bit different. They're different to the TV shows, and I think out of necessity, with a couple of exceptions. Because they're movies, they are generally focused on telling big, earth-shattering stories, where the crew have to save the day, basically. And that's what works best when you're trying to appeal to casual audiences at the cinema. By comparison, Star Wars began as a movie franchise. Star Wars TV shows are only a relatively recent development. The Star Wars franchise was originally primarily focused on several interconnected central themes. How power can corrupt an individual, how losing a sense of spiritual harmony and balance with the Force can lead someone to anger, hate, and eventually the dark side. The Jedi represent an aspirational version of humanity, championing such values as hope, personal sacrifice, and selflessness. All of these things define the core conflict between good and evil across those first three films. The entire message and the story arcs of the primary character, Luke Skywalker, and the primary villain, Darth Vader, are explored and brought to a comprehensive and satisfying conclusion in The Return of the Jedi. And to be honest, I think Star Wars probably should have ended there, but anyway. Yes, Star Wars has gone deeper with its mythology in expanded universe novels, prequel films, and then the sequel trilogy, a few other films, TV shows, but nothing the franchise has done recently has had the impact of those first three films. Star Wars worked best when it focused on telling big stories, major stakes, not small stories. This is why the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, which is out now at the moment, this is why that film just feels inconsequential by comparison to the original trilogy, because there's just so much less at stake. It doesn't feel important. The film doesn't feel important. Yes, the film has lots of Easter eggs, callbacks and references and tie-ins to Star Wars lore, some of the aliens, the ships, the planets, etc. It's got action, side quests, and plenty of CGI, some of it pretty good, some of it a bit average, I'll be honest. It's got plenty of cute Grogu moments, but that's not enough to build a compelling movie out of. It doesn't help that character arcs don't really develop in an interesting way. There's no sense of galactic jeopardy, and the film simply doesn't feel like it matters. You're watching it and you feel as though the events unfolding on screen don't really matter in the wider scale of things. Star Wars only really works well when it's being true to its original identity. The epic galaxy hanging in the balance kind of stories, because these are the best ways of exploring the franchise's themes of the light versus dark sides, good versus evil. The Mandalorian and Grogu, therefore, just feels like a generic sci-fi action movie that just happens to take place in the Star Wars universe. It actually feels like 3 or 4 episodes of the Mandalorian TV show just stitched together, causing it to become disjointed in places. And because the characters just aren't engaging and the plot feels like a MacGuffin quest, it's all quite dull and uninteresting. I would go so far as to actually say boring. It just feels like it's lacking in too many of the important ingredients that make Star Wars what it's supposed to be, what it once was. And Star Wars fans deserve much more than a story that lacks substance and consequence. The film lacks so much of both that it seems to fall back consistently on Grogu being cute and adorable, yet again, as if that's some kind of substitute for narrative depth. Despite the tagline, this was definitely not the way to tell a Star Wars story. And so, to go back to the beginning, to come full circle with this, going back to Star Trek, there was an attempt to turn that franchise into something it was never meant to be. An action-heavy spectacle, big blockbuster crowd pleasers. Just mindless action. And the Kelvin Timeline movies, there was 3 of them, beginning back in 2009, they didn't work. They didn't work. They departed too far from the tone and spirit of what Star Trek was. And when you mess with the recipe of such a property, and you remove too many of the important ingredients, it shouldn't come as a surprise when you end up with a very different, and I would say unrecognizable, final product. In recent years, both of these franchises, Star Trek and Star Wars, have undergone significant transformations, and I think they're both lesser for it. And I think when it comes to Star Wars in particular, the first 3 films are all you'll ever need. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts on The Mandalorian and Grogu in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Computing Forever. Hit that notification bell to be notified of future updates on the channel. Share the video out there. Hit that like button. Take care. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.